Are you feeling all right, Rock?
I feel fine.
Wait, I didn't know there was a Mega Man movie.
Well, no, it's kind of a fan-made thing.
Oh, that explains why him and Roll have so much sexual tension. Yeah.
I don't think it's intended to be sexual. I think they're supposed to be like brother and sister.
What, you mean like that Folgers commercial with the incest?
What? No.
Roll. Please let go of him. Let go.
Okay, maybe. I don't know.
Hey, Chief, I got another question.
Yeah? What?
So I guess now we're just totally copying Grimbeard's whole thing?
Oh, what, like this was the first time? Hello, and welcome to my Mega Man Legends series retrospective. I'm glad you're here, but before we get started, I have a confession to make. I don't really like the Mega Man games. Alright, calm down all three of you Mega Man fans. But just so you know, I do have my credentials in order. I've beaten Mega Man 3, 4, and 5, Mega Man X 1 and 2, Mega Man Battle Network 1, The Mighty Number 9, and I've played as Mega Man in Super Smash Bros. I like to think I've given them a fair chance, but these games are not generally fun to me. They exist in that same place as the hardest FromSoft bosses where I can beat them, but by the time I do, I am no longer enjoying the experience. Something about the precision of the platforming and memorizing the boss attack patterns never really clicked for me, and while save states bring victory much closer, I'd be lying if I said that it felt the same amount of satisfying to win that way. You know what is a fun Mega Man game? 20XX. I will not be taking any questions. So it might be surprising that despite my friends loving it when we were kids, I've never actually played or really even seen any of the Mega Man Legends series before sitting down to make the original version of this video. That's right, this is a remake. I almost called it a remastered edition of the video, but I didn't want people to think that there was a remastered version of the games. That would be crushing. Anyway, I don't have any nostalgia for the games from when I was a child, so keep that in mind when I tell you that Mega Man Legends is not only the best Mega Man game I've played by far, but may very well be the best PS1 game I've ever played, and it's sitting pretty far up the list of best games overall. I think I've made my opinions on the concepts of games aging clear in another video, but typically when I recommend one of these older games, especially the 3D ones, there's a little caveat implicitly tacked on to the end of that recommendation. If I say, this game's a lot of fun, or it looks great, the quiet part of that sentence is, for its time. If you tell me a game looks like it's from the PS1, that's a positive, but I guess it helps to set the expectations for you. Tenchu and Blood Omen are great games, but it took me a while to mentally adjust to a point where I could enjoy them on their own terms. But I don't need that caveat here. Mega Man Legends looks great. It controls well and it's a lot of fun. You could add subtitles and the ability to remap the controls and put it on Steam and I'd buy it right now. Don't get me wrong, I'm well aware that there are other games on the PS1 that were more cinematic or told a more compelling story, but as much as I love Legends of Dragoon, this Legends is a lot more fun in the moment-to-moment gameplay. I asked one of my friends who loved it as a kid why it was so special to them, and he said, I can't really put it into words. There's just nothing else like it. And he's right. Somehow, after nearly 30 years and including a prequel and a sequel, there still really is nothing else like it. Mega Man Legends is a third-person action-adventure game and getting yelled at by your girlfriend simulator.
Get out of here now!
It was developed by Capcom and released on the PS1 in December of 1997 in Japan and 1998 everywhere else. Legends was a departure from the established Mega Man formula, which had, up until that point, been combat-focused side-scrolling platformers with punishing boss fights. This game would still have its fair share of action, but with the difficulty dialed down and a larger focus on establishing a world and a narrative to drive you through it. It would be a game that could be enjoyed by everyone, even women. I didn't write that. That was apparently said by one of the game's producers, Yoshinori Kawano. I saw it in a translated interview by Shmuplations. You should check them out if you like reading developer interviews. They're pretty cool. The story of Legends is set on Earth in the distant future, sometime around 5300 AD. At some point in the past, all of the people were replaced with artificial humans called carbons. These carbons grow, age, reproduce, and die, but they are still machines, and so they can easily replace their organic parts with mechanical ones like fancy eyes, organs, and even entire limbs. I guess that's why no one really cares that we're running around the mall with a gun for an arm. I just thought I was in America.
Isn't this America? I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
Most of Earth is underwater, but despite the rising sea levels, civilization continues on atop small islands powered not by fossil fuels, but instead through the magic of healing crystals known as quantum refractors. These are extremely rare and valuable, usually only found in underground dungeons known as gates. The gates are filled with aggressive, semi-sentient automatons called Reaverbots, and they do not like to share their refractors. So much like the followers of Jonathan Smith, the adventurers who enter these dungeons get low, searching from the windows to the walls for treasures and ancient technology. They're known as diggers, a profession that I will be enunciating carefully, and one such digger is this series' version of Megaman. He's 14 and has the reading comprehension level of the average American high school student post-COVID.
The insertion of 3 level 2 or higher prototype Anthro unit ID cards.
When the game starts, he's in the middle of one such dig, which acts as a short tutorial and ends with a simple boss fight. Megaman thinks he's safe, but that boss reactivates and follows him outside. With his back to the ocean, things aren't looking good for the Blue Bomber, but he's saved at the last minute by his adoptive sister, Roll Casket. Roll is a child prodigy in the field of robotics, engineering, weapons development, as well as the pilot of the team's airship. She's basically this universe's version of Tony Stark. She also acts as the spotter during the dungeon explorations. That's kind of a mission handler who stays in the ship and keeps an eye on the map. They're there to offer guidance and warn of potential dangers.
Hey, Megaman. Have you ever wondered where the Reaverbots came from? I mean, who made them and why? You know, we go around doing digs all over the place, but is it right? It's almost like stealing. Megaman! I'm picking up 3 Reaverbots close by! Watch out!
She's a great character, and I think there's a world where a co-op Legends-like would allow one player to fill Roll's role while a team of friends delve the depths over voice chat. As the Flutter attempts to flee that boss, the ship is damaged and they have to crash on the nearby Cadillacs Island. After a bumpy landing, we're introduced to Barrel Casket. He's Roll's grandfather. Get it? Barrel Roll? Barrel is a well-known professor, and he was also a pretty famous digger back in the day. He's actually the one who found Megaman as a baby, locked in stasis while he was illegally trespassing in a gate, and so he decided to take him home and raise him. That's all Megaman knows of where he came from. It's a pretty compelling setup for a mentor character. Barrel seems like the kind of guy who would have some great stories and nuggets of advice, so it's unfortunate that he doesn't really have much to say throughout the game. If there was going to be, say, a prequel spin-off to establish backstory and set things up for some kind of sequel to this game, Barrel would be a great choice of character to head that up and really flesh out the lore. Yeah, he sure would. The last member of the crew is their pet monkey in a diaper named Data. He's always just doing his little dance, he's just happy to be here. I don't trust this thing at all. I just don't like him. It's something about those eyes. Life has taught me that anyone this happy is just waiting for you to let your guard down so they can put a knife in your back. Anyway, the gang lives on their flying ships, sailing the skies and exploring ancient ruins in search of treasure and answers. Megaman wants to know where he came from, and Roll and Barrel are searching for Roll's parents, who went missing many years ago. This game is just one small detour in that grander story, and I think it's a great setup. With Megaman having to explore the island in search of money and parts to repair their ship. Unfortunately, that exploration will have to wait because like a kid from the country, life is pretty limited until we get a license. In this case, it's our digger's license. Despite this nice, open-looking map, the guardrails are still up for much of the game. In some ways, those rails are obvious. Doors are locked until you progress the story, either literally or because they're blocked by NPCs. In other ways, the game uses tricks that almost feel Metroidvanian in their execution, keeping things out of reach until you find the right item in the world to unlock your ability to interact with them, smashing walls or jumping higher. And I'm much more of a fan of the latter design, even if it does lead to the same outcome. Still, some of the most engaging and enjoyable parts of Legend's world building are things that would be considered boring or repetitive or anti-player now. When we first arrive on the island, you can explore a little bit. If you ignore the sign for the city and choose to go south, there's a little grassland to walk around on, and you can talk to a few people, but you can't actually do anything because you don't have your license yet. The doors are all locked, so when you walk back and head towards the town, halfway there you're teleported back to the flitter to talk to the police. Thankfully, they're pretty pleasant. They wanted to make sure no one was hurt, and they take Barrel into town to get everyone set up with the right paperwork so you can stay as long as you need. You're free to go, so you walk into town, talk to the junk shop owner, and then go back outside to the subgate, and then go back into town to talk to the junk shop owner, and then go back outside and talk to Roll, and then you go back into the town and talk to the mayor, and then you go back outside and talk to Roll again, and then you go back inside the town and do several combat missions that all finally get you your digger's license and let you explore a little bit. If that's all you were doing, it would feel really obnoxious, but it's not, because this small piece of the world is so rich with NPCs and little interesting things to see and do that it lets you slow down and smell the flowers and listen to the birds and kick a can around and dig in the trash and feel like this world is just a little bit more real. You still can't go anywhere else, all of the exits are blocked, but it's enough to not feel like you're stuck in a box or a hallway. In between many of these steps, the same NPCs will be there to talk to, but the things that they'll say change to reflect the state of the world. When you first step into town, they're talking about the threat of the sky pirates. Some kids are planning to try and catch one, the police are planning the city's defenses, and most of the citizens are planning to evacuate. But after you leave the mayor's office for the first time, they have evacuated, even though the pirates aren't there yet. And I didn't notice it at first, but as you're walking out to Roll, there's no one else to talk to. There aren't any cars on the road, and the police are all gone in preparation for this invading army. After you defend the town, the people come back and they're talking about what happened, about the different buildings that might have been destroyed, and commenting on the inefficiency of the police. It all comes together to make a convincing living world out of a space that's actually very small. There are a few promising-looking indie games that are trying to catch the same spark as this game, and I think that this is going to be the part that's the most crucial if they want to succeed in that. The dungeons and boss fights in Mega Man Legends are fun, the story is cool, but it's this part, the world building, that makes all of that matter. Even on a replay, the game manages to consistently surprise me with just how realized its world feels. When you go into town to meet the mayor, you'll actually run into one of those pirates. You overhear her talking with her minions and planning for the attack, but I'll go from oldest to youngest. The Bonne family is a lot like Team Rocket, and I love these guys. They even have their own mugs on their mugs. Teasel is the oldest brother and leader of the group. He's got a temper, but he clearly loves his family, and he has a great can-do attitude. Even in defeat, he's looking out for his little sister and little brother and trying to be a good role model to them. He doesn't harass them for their failures. He encourages them and tries to help them to look at it in a different way. He reminds me of some of my favorite characters from older anime like Cowboy Bebop and Ghost in the Shell. Just don't look up the voice actor. Tron is the middle child, and she gives Roll a run for her money in terms of engineering skill. She's the one who built all of the little yellow dudes you see running around, as well as most of the robots her family uses in combat. She's another great character, and after you get rid of a dog that has her stuck up a light pole, she develops a crush on Megaman, but who could blame her? And I'm going to be upfront here, I'm not really someone who cares about the relationships of fictional characters, but I am fully on Team Megatron in the Legends shipping wars. Roll is great, but she's vanilla. Tron is best girl, and she even got her own game. More on that later. She's also 14, which I only point out to emphasize how weird this line is from those developer interviews where one says, "We went very deep on her design." For example, her clothing, which somehow feels a little dirty. Oh yeah, sure man, why don't you take a seat over there? In the original version of this review, I said Megaman was 10 years old because I read that somewhere online and I didn't double check it. And I've got to own that mistake, but in my defense there's a note in Legends 2 where Beryl writes that Roll had picked Megaman's name based on her favorite video game character, so in my head I thought it makes sense that she must be several years older than him, and then I just didn't think any more about it. Anyway, there is a third child in the Bonne family, Bonne, but there's not much to say about him. He's just a baby. Overall, the Bonne family are great villains. They have clear motivations, they're interesting characters, and they're likable, especially in this game. As the series went on, I feel like they got kind of flanderized, constantly becoming less and less competent, but this is really when they're at their best. It's not that they fail because they suck, it's because you're just too good for them to win, and I think that's how things should feel. The Bonnes and their adorable robot helpers have come to search for a legendary treasure rumored to be hidden beneath the island. The stories say that the treasure will unleash a terrible catastrophe if it's ever found, but that sounds like someone else's problem. And even the mayor knows that the cops are useless, so she says, "It's up to you, Megaman. Only you have what it takes. The grit, the determination, the concentrated piss and vinegar to stop them. I want you to go out there and put a bullet in every one of these no-good, dirty sons of bitches. And when you do, you tell them I sent ya." And now you can start the game proper. It's split into two distinct parts. The surface world is bright, open, and colorful. There is some combat op here, but overall it's a safe place with friendly NPCs, shops, and minigames. I don't personally care for minigames, but they are there if that's your thing. One of them is to kick a dog. That's kinda weird. And now that I'm thinking about it, you also kick dogs at the power plant too. You also fight a lot of dogs in Resident Evil and Devil May Cry. Hey Capcom, what's with all the dog kicking? Oh yeah? Alright, I'll tell them. They just said, fuck them. And the other side of the coin is the gates, underground ruins full of murder bots and secrets. These gates are small, self-contained levels that typically involve some light platforming, some combat, and fairly simple puzzles before you get to the final room where you'll fight a boss and collect a quantum refractor. They're a wonderful contrast to the surface world because while they're still bright and colorful, they're also oppressive and sinister. Despite the cartoony art style, the game still manages to build a sense of threat in these spaces. A part of that is the robots lurking around every corner, sometimes jumping at you from the ceilings, sometimes phasing in and out of invisibility with giant knives and cannons. Some seem almost humanoid, while others are insect or animal-based, and the whole time there's this creepy background music of shrill, muted strings. It's a fantastic parallel to the aesthetics and the narrative of the game itself, with its cheerful and lighthearted veneer hiding the reality that right below this happy little town, an army of killing machines is just waiting for the order to march up the stairs. So how's a little guy like Megaman supposed to fight his way through them? He's just a kid. Well, like any good real-life digger, Megaman's favorite tool is high explosives. You can customize your main blaster with upgrades that increase its damage, range, firing speed, and the number of shots that can be on screen at any time. Those upgrades can be found or bought, but some of the best are made by roll once you've found the right parts. There's also a nice big list of special weapons you can switch between at your home base that have a limited ammo pool, and several of those I did not find on my first playthrough, including the vacuum arm that makes collecting these damn crystals easier. While you're exploring, you can find those special parts in chests and these holes which you can search by interacting with them. Some of the stuff she can make will also open up new traversal options like the spring boots or the jet skates, and some are weapons like the drill that can destroy the rock walls that separate the dungeons. This is really cool because it lets you traverse between those areas without having to go back up to the surface world, and it transforms the gates from small isolated mazes into a sprawling labyrinth, like there's a world that's hidden right beneath your feet. Kill some robots for crystals, and Rogue can also upgrade those special weapons for a hefty price. Depending on the weapon, it will have multiple levels of upgrades, and some will even get infinite ammo. That makes things a lot easier, but hold on. A player-driven difficulty curve, interconnected dungeons with a central hub, build variety, circle strafing. This is baby's first Dark Souls. Am I truly so predictable? Can you just smear Dark Souls on anything and I'll like it? Like a toddler in ketchup? Yes. Yes, you can. Even though I don't intend to go through the game's story in detail, this is a good place to stop for spoilers if you want to play the game for yourself, which I do recommend because it's really fun. Unfortunately, it's kind of abandonware because you can't currently buy it on any digital storefront, and as of this writing, Capcom has done everything they can to avoid saying that they'll bring it back in a new collection anytime soon. I believe the last place it was available was the PSP and PlayStation 3 store, but Sony took that one behind the woodshed, so hey, what are you gonna do? Don't blame me, Capcom. Let me buy your game. You know I'll do it. You know how many copies of Resident Evil 4 I've paid for. Alright, so you've got the premise of the game now. You'll be fighting your way through dungeons and battling the Bonnes. I know I said that after you get your license you're able to explore a little, and that is true, but unfortunately you do have to do the sub-gates in a specific order. First the forest, and then the lake, and then the closure woods, because you need the crystal from the first gate to fix the boat, and the crystal from the second gate to fix the flutter so you can fly to the third gate. It's really not that complicated. Some of those fights are pretty cool, but there's not much story to spoil there, unless it's somehow surprising to you that the Bonnes and the bots don't actually kill Megaman. I especially love this part after the Bonne airship fight where you have to shoot down their giant bird robot and Roll and Megaman think they died.
They did eject, didn't they?
I don't think so.
Maybe we should have taken it easier on them.
Maybe.
And then you just go back to the flutter like, alright, back to work. There are 3 primary dungeons around the island called sub-gates, and once you've completed those, the flutter is repaired, but that also causes the main gate in the center of the island to open up. Get to the bottom of that one and you'll find a locked door that requires you to go back out and find 3 more mini dungeons across the city with keys. And this was really the only part of the game that started to feel like filler. Still, there are some interesting encounters in these, and they don't take too long. I just wish that they could have been implemented into earlier sub-dungeons instead, rather than having to go in and out of the main gate. I especially liked the gross robo-human centipede with the prolapsed anus that we have to shoot at until it dies. Anyway, after clearing those arenas and before you go back into the main gate is also your last chance to finish up any side missions that you want to do, because we are now approaching the end game. We take the keys going back to the main gate and meet a new character called Megaman Juno. He tells us that our man's proper designation is Megaman Trigger and that he is suffering from amnesia. Juno sees Trigger as defective, so he captures him and plans to take him back to the space station Eden for reprogramming, but first he's got a job to do. His job is late-stage birth control. Whenever the replicants on Catalog's Island replicate too much, he wakes up and sends a signal to Eden to cull the herd. Eden is a space station that sends down the bomb, and the cycle starts over. He leaves us trapped, but luckily the Bonne family comes to the rescue, and we chase after Juno, turning the final corner to come face to face with Data. How did he get down here past all the murder bots? He's gotta be in league with them. Every person on the island is about to be destroyed and he's still dancing. Oh, I'm about to spank this monkey. Nope, I may have jumped to a conclusion there. Apparently he's just giving us a save point. Right. Well, carry on. Juno was by far the hardest fight for me, and that's appropriate seeing as he's the final boss. Honestly, he was probably a lot harder for me than he was meant to be, since I missed a lot of the side content on my first run through and didn't have a lot of the really good special weapons. It was the first time in the game that I had to go do some grinding, but eventually he blew up and second phase, hold on. Alright, so we beat him for real, but it doesn't really matter because we let him keep talking and he backs himself up to the cloud and starts the Carbon Crusher. All seems lost when the monkey comes in and uses an administrator override to delete the Juno backup and save the island. He tells us that Trigger made him as external storage to protect his own memories, but that he's not allowed to give any of them back yet, and we just accept that reasoning and leave. Now with the flutter repaired, the team can continue their adventures. The Bonne stole the biggest refractor that's ever been seen and sail off into the sunset too. And everyone gets a happy ending. Nope, no, not like that. So that's Mega Man Legends. It was a great time, and I can't believe it took me so long to play it. I also can't believe that Capcom brought back Battle Network before this one, but apparently Legends didn't sell very well. In a translation by Rockman Corner, Inafune stated in his 2011 book, quote, "It didn't sell, and when I looked closer, I realized the reason why. Arrogance. At the time, Mega Man was a massive hit with elementary school children, and we were confident, too confident, that no matter what we did, they would support us. So we changed things. We introduced 3D graphics, added RPG mechanics, and tried to bring in a broader audience. Older fans, teens, even self-proclaimed otaku who had outgrown the series. We thought we could have it all, aim high and the kids would still follow, but they didn't. The reviews were positive, the game itself wasn't the problem. The problem was that we misunderstood our audience." End quote. And there you have it. Die-hard Mega Man fans didn't like the changes and no one else really gave it a chance. Well, I gave it a chance, and I think it's great just the way it is. It's crazy how much depth there is to this game. Missing the vacuum arm is one thing, but I didn't know until my second time through that there was a side quest with the kids to make a secret hideout, or a museum in the lakeside area that you can help fill with exhibits. I didn't know that you could walk into the police station or the bank near City Hall, and I totally missed that you could pay to rebuild the town. So for me, a ton of these NPCs and the places that they lived just ceased to exist. There's a great guide by Worn Out Will that'll help you find a lot of this stuff if you're interested, but I'm bringing it all up here because when I missed all of these things, I thought I was being thorough. I don't normally replay games, I don't have the time, so I try to make sure that I see everything I can on a first playthrough without using a guide, and I still missed like half of the side content. There is so much life crammed into this tiny little Megaman game that you can't even buy anymore. Still, if it did get the port it deserves one day, there are a few quality of life changes that could be nice. I think every game should have subtitles, but the biggest point of friction for a new player is definitely going to be the camera. You can't even look up unless you use the aim button, and then you can't move. I understand why it works this way since the game came out at a time when not everyone had a controller with joysticks and they had to make it playable on just the D-pad, but updating that would help a new audience to enjoy the game a little easier. It would take away some of the combat difficulty, but that's not really a bad thing, and it's obvious that the game was targeted towards kids anyway. I would also like to either have the vacuum always available or give the pickup range a big boost. Enemy drops disappear pretty quickly, and if you're still fighting when an enemy dies, it's very likely that you'll miss most of what they drop. Having to give up your second weapon slot to suck up those crystals faster is trading a lot of utility for the convenience, especially when you're talking about breaking the walls and needing the drill. Having to leave a dungeon to get the drill to break the walls to continue exploring really sucks. Beyond that, if I was being really greedy, it would be cool if there were some kind of post-game, but I rarely engage in those anyway, so it's not like I'm saying the game needs it to be better. I just really like this concept of being a digger in this world, meeting new people and uncovering the mysteries of the past. Give me Mega Man Legends Chalice dungeons and I would be in there for days, but at this point we are basically talking about a whole extra game tacked on to the end of this one, so maybe I'm really just saying, I wish there was more Mega Man Legends. I wish there was more Mega Man Legends. I wish there was more.
Who the hell do you think you are? I'm Megaman.
I'm Megaman.
Right? That was so corny.
Oh, yeah, right. So corny.
You okay?
Yeah, just something in my eye socket.
No, not like this. This isn't what I meant. No. The Misadventures of Tron Bonne is a third-person, first-person, dungeon-crawling, isometric, block puzzle, business management farming simulator developed by Capcom and released in 1999 for the PlayStation 1. You might gather from that description that it is a mixed bag of ideas and mechanics straddling the iteration gap between Mega Man Legends 1 and 2, which is a doubly strange place for it to be because it is also a prequel to Legends 1 and has no bearing on the rest of the series outside of a single returning character in Legends 2 who does not matter. You'd think they would have just gone straight for Legends 2, right? Well, keep in mind that this was back in the days when games were commonly only given a year of development time. Legends 2 wouldn't release until 2 years and 4 months after Legends 1 in Japan, which doesn't sound that long when you put it against the development time for modern games, but for comparison, Resident Evil 2 came out 1 year and 10 months after Resident Evil 1, and Resident Evil 1 was a massive success. It sold millions of copies and solidified an entire genre that did already exist but certainly wasn't in the mainstream. Mega Man Legends 1 was not a massive success. It did not solidify a genre, much less bring it into the mainstream. It's difficult to find any sales numbers at all, but according to series creator Keiji Inafune, it was a commercial failure, so its sequel, eating up over 2 years of development resources, was a huge gamble, one that I hope pays off. So coming back to that mixed bag of ideas and mechanics that I said this game is, I can start to see why it exists at all. I have a sneaking suspicion that it was made because the team had already spent a lot of time building out these different systems while working on Legends 2, many of which wouldn't actually make it into that game at all. And so I think this was intended to try and make something back on all that investment. As for whether or not it's any good, the game opens with the oldest Bonne, Teasel, searching the desert for a legendary treasure with youngest brother Bonne. Tron clearly wanted to go out as well, but Teasel tells her to sit back and relax. She's done enough by building the airship and all of the robots. But what he doesn't want to tell her is that he paid for all of that by taking out a big loan from a criminal known as Lex Loth, and he's hoping that he can sell that legendary treasure to pay off the debt. His search is interrupted by Glide, a Team Rocket wannabe with a thing for ducks. That's right, in this game even Team Rocket has their own Team Rocket. Glide is an enforcer who has come to collect on the loan, and he's not willing to set up a payment plan. After a short fight, he kidnaps Teasel and Bonne, leaving Tron to figure out some way to pay off the family's debt. That's a lot of pressure to put on a 14-year-old girl. Faced with this impossible situation, Tron does what anyone else in her situation would, forcing her army of slaves to post AI-generated retro video game retrospectives to YouTube, hoping to make enough ad revenue to buy her family's freedom. But when that doesn't work out, they turn to theft, but I repeat myself. And that's our setup. Tron needs to make 1 million zenny to save her brothers. Thankfully, there's no time limit on the loan, and you can do whatever you want. When you get to 1 million, you'll trigger the next part of the story automatically. So how do we do that? Well, let's start with the airship. This is your home base, and there are several rooms that you can explore. You'll unlock more as you progress through the game. They've even got one just for Magic the Gathering, and I bet it smells terrible in there. Each room has a selection of serve bots that you can interact with by talking to them or giving them items. And this will be the majority of your NPC interaction in the game, so it's nice that they do have a little bit of variety in their personality, but because there are so many of them, none really get any kind of character development. They all have their own stats that you can raise by taking them on missions or training them with mini-games, and apparently you can reduce their laziness in the torture room, but I never did that because I didn't actually unlock it until after I had finished the game, and I only got it because of a cheat code. Most of the bots also have special skills that you can uncover by filling their brain stat or by giving them special items that you find on missions. Some will just tell you what they want, but if you've got something you're not sure what to do with, you can take it to the appraiser and he'll tell you who it's for. There are the bones there of a deep and engaging system, but unfortunately it's never really fleshed out, and it's a shame that the game never really gave me a reason to interact with any of them. When you're done poking around, head to the HQ and we can talk about where you'll be spending the majority of your time, which is the missions. You're given 4 mission types: action, RPG, puzzle, and free. Free is kind of its own thing, so we'll save that for last, but for action, RPG, and puzzle, there's one of each type of mission available at the beginning, and after you advance the story, you'll unlock a second mission of each type. Each has 3 difficulty levels with increasing rewards, and because you cannot replay a mission once it's completed, you can't get all of the money you need from any one mission type. The RPG missions are first-person dungeon crawls where you'll control a remote drone and you direct the serve bots to disarm traps and occasionally fight enemies. This is probably the most mechanically simple mission type, but I enjoyed exploring the caves, and it's also the only time you'll get to talk to other people, specifically the NPC diggers. This is really the kind of stuff I wanted more of in Legends 1, fleshing out the world and the idea of digging as a profession, so it's unfortunate that it doesn't last very long.
It's a skeleton! Yikes!
Yeah, I get that a lot. Please, no autographs. The action missions are third-person combat set pieces similar to the overworld from Legends 1, where Tron pilots the Gustav and goes out pillaging the countryside. And like the RPG missions, these inject a lot of personality into the game. They introduce a light nemesis in this police girl, and Tron's banter with her was fun, though her second boss fight was the first time I wondered if I was doing something wrong with the combat in the game. After hitting her once, she'd be immune to all damage for a while, and it was a real pain to not get hit while I was waiting for her immunity to wear off. I think the game has an expectation that you'll be crafting healing items to bring with you on these missions, but I didn't have any reason to do that at this point, and it felt counterproductive because I'm supposed to be saving money. The second set of these missions switches to stealing animals from a farm and gets rid of the police girl in favor of fighting Glide's duck robots, which wasn't a terrible change except for the fact that they respawn infinitely and it can be really annoying to hit them in the air. The puzzle missions are puzzles. Believe it or not, they task you with robbing a dockyard full of shipping containers with a limited number of moves, and there's not really much else to say about it. The levels do get harder as they go up, but this one's gonna be down to how much you enjoy spatial puzzles, and I don't. It feels like it was going to be a mini-game, but they needed a fourth mission type at the last minute. Anyway, finally, the free mission is a unique dig in the ruins that Teasel found before he was captured by Glide. The goal is to find that legendary treasure he was looking for, known as Diana's Tear, and this is this game's version of the sub-gates from Legends 1, which is cool because those were fun. The mission difficulty for this one is static though, and you can attempt it at any time, but without some upgrades for the Gustav, it would be pretty painful, especially the final boss. Thankfully, you don't have to finish the mission to benefit from it, because you can leave whenever you want and you'll keep whatever you've found. It's probably my favorite mission of the game, and I wish there was more to it or there were more of them rather than the block puzzles and the first-person thing. None of these missions are terrible, though the puzzles are by far the least enjoyable for me personally. They can feel repetitive and disjointed from the story, but I appreciate that the devs were trying to do something different. Speaking of the story, it's pretty minimal, but I'll still put a spoiler warning here in case you really want to avoid them, so go to the time on screen if you'd like to skip ahead. Okay, so you have collected 1 million zenny, and it's time to go pay off the loan, but of course, being a loan shark, Lex Loth doesn't just want the initial amount. He's also going to force Tron to pay interest, and he tells her that she now owes 2 million zenny, and I think you can see where this is going. Thankfully, the higher level missions reward a lot more money, so we do more of the same thing we've already done, and relatively quickly Tron is ready to talk to Loth again. Hopefully, you'll have also gotten some upgrades for the Gustav and boosted your team's stats, because once again we're entering the end game. It's basically the exact same scene. Loth still isn't gonna give back Teasel and Bonne. I'm starting to think he's not actually a good guy. Tron is kidnapped and taken to the mines where her brothers have been kept, and Teasel explains that they've been forced to dig for an ancient super weapon and that they finally found the piece needed to power it up. The Bonds decide that they're going to steal the super weapon to get back at Loth, but first they've got to figure out how to get free. Back on the airship, it's up to the serve bots to save everyone, and whichever bot you have set as your favorite will take charge and initiate the final mission. After another short dungeon, the Bonds are free and Tron is back in command. We have to beat Glide again, but this time he doesn't turn it around in a cutscene, and then it's time for the final battle where you'll have to fight a giant robot. You pull out the power crystals and eventually destroy its flying head, which takes so long. Seriously, I thought my game must have glitched after sitting in this loop for like 10 minutes with no sign of progress. To be fair, this was at least partially my own fault. I didn't, and still don't, really understand how the serve-bot stats affect the Gustavs, and I was still using the weapon you start the game with. And you might wonder why I would be doing that, and the answer to that question is that I only ever found one other weapon in this game. As far as I can tell, there are only 3 weapons total. The name bazooka might make you think of missiles, but it's more of a grenade launcher the way the shots arc, and you can't move while using it. It does decent damage, but standing still against enemies is a big no-no. So I stuck with the base weapon for the majority of the game, and there's no way to upgrade it. There is also a Gatling gun that would have been really nice to have, but the robot that makes it asks for a hyper trigger, and I could never seem to find it. Turns out, there's not one in the game. He actually wants fireworks, which I had been packing around for hours. I might have known this because I did take them to the appraiser and he does specifically tell you to give them to that robot, but I never tried that because when I talked to him he asked for something else, so I assumed that he would need the fireworks later. I didn't use any walkthroughs like Legends 1, and aside from how long it took to kill the other bosses, I never really had any trouble with the combat, so I thought that I was doing what I was supposed to be the whole time. And then I get here to the final boss, and the health bar goes on forever. I read that it's like 3 times the width of the entire screen on purpose. So even if you have done everything right, I guess you're just supposed to hope that what you're doing is working? I didn't find out until I watched a long play later that this is intentional, and you're supposed to keep fighting until eventually its health goes down enough that it shows up on screen. But that's stupid. I don't like to rag on devs like I've ever been able to do better, but when I can't tell if the game is working or not for a really long time on purpose, I think that counts as bad design. At this point, thinking I had no other option, I turned on the cheat to max my robot's attack stat, and even then, it still took quite a while. Anyway, the day is saved, Loath and Glide are in jail, and the Bonne family have a big payday coming with the refractor they took from that giant robot, and things are looking up.
Hey there, number 1! You did a great job! I'm proud of you! Thanks! Gosh, Miss Tron, thank you! I promise to keep working hard! Thank you! I know you're a hard worker! Like today, for instance. You were working trash detail, right? That's right! It took me a long time to get rid of it all! It was hard work! Very good, very good! It was tough! That pile of junk in the storage room was really heavy for some reason. Of course, you left alone the treasure box that the gold refractor was in, right? Huh? I threw out everything in the storage room. What do you think you're doing? Everything we worked for, everything we got is gone! Poof! Up in a puff of smoke! Just you wait! I've got something really special waiting for you in the torture room!
Alright, spoilers over. And forgive me because now I will be critical. I wish I could judge the Misadventures of Tron Bonne on its own merits, but it is part of a series. If it were not a part of that series, I probably would have never played it. And so it benefits from being in that series, and at the same time, it's impossible for me not to hold it up to that series in comparison. Megaman Legends 1 is a great game. I played it for the first time and wrote my original review for that game in August of 2024, and I stand by most of what I said. It's a special game, and to borrow a trope, the total of its worth is far more than the sum of its parts. But those parts, the art direction, the story, the characters, the combat, the weapon customization, the setting, the music, they were all still pretty good on their own, especially in the context of the PlayStation 1. The Misadventures of Tron Bonne is substantially weaker in pretty much all of those categories except maybe the art direction, but that's kind of a given since it was already established and they didn't change it. The music is fine, but there's no Apple market. In fact, there's no market at all. There's no city. The game does take place on an island and it has a name, but I had to go look it up when writing this script because I don't think it's ever actually said in the game. It's Rye Ship Island, but it might as well not have a name because it's not a place. You can send bots out to scout for items and your missions allegedly take place there, but it has no identity beyond being a map on the wall. It's the same with the airship. Everything is sectioned off and disconnected, and it sucks. Navigating the rooms in the airship to talk to all the robots doesn't feel like it would be all that impactful to the gameplay, but because you don't have that town to walk around and talk to people and look in garbage cans, the game feels so lifeless. Tron doesn't even get a 3D model. You only ever see her 2D sprite, which is really weird because she had a 3D model in Legends 1, and you could have just put it on the side over here instead of her picture. It would be even better if she could walk around inside the ship and interact with the robots directly. Sure, it would have been more work, but it would have added so much personality. It's a hard thing to quantify, but that personality is what I loved so much about Legends 1. That sense of letting you kind of live in and explore a space, even if it wasn't central to the gameplay. Places like the library and the hospital and the inside of the Flutter. In its own way, it's a role-playing game where you are playing the role of Megaman, exploring the island and defeating the bad guys. I don't feel like I'm role-playing as Tron, starting as a mechanical whiz kid and growing into her place as a full member of the team, learning to lead and saving her family from danger. And it's a bummer because I've always liked Tron as a character. She's intelligent, determined, outwardly imitating her older brother's brash confidence, while internally struggling with her insecurities and her feelings for Trigger. She's great. I just wish the devs were less weird about her. While we're on the subject of character writing, can I just say that I really do not vibe with how heavily the bumbling villain trope is used in this game.
Alright, let's get what we came for and get out of here before the police show up! Is this the bank? Alright, open the doors! It's full of dogs! Wait a minute! This isn't the bank! Oops, sorry. The bank's in the next town over. Why is it always this way with you? Whenever I ask you to do something? Sorry.
True to the Saturday morning cartoon aesthetic, it is valid for there to be a wildly incompetent bad guy, but it is a constant one-note gag with the serve bots, the police, the diggers, and Loath's minions. My problem is that aside from Tron, there's no straight man for it to bounce off of, and we are Tron, so everything that annoys her is also an annoyance for the player. The first time I went to rob a bank and wound up somewhere else, it was cute. The second time, it was a little cute. The third time, all I could think was, why are you like this? Don't get me wrong, the Bonds aren't any less competent here than they were in Legends 1. They were always just evil enough to be really good villains while not really being that bad. They destroy the city and build giant death robots, but they also just constantly fail at everything they do because Megaman's there, being a hero. That's funny. Haha, look at Team Rocket blasting off again. It's not as funny when you're playing as them and you're constantly reminded how much of a loser you and everyone around you is. Like Sisyphus pushing the boulder to the top of the hill only to have it knocked down by a little yellow Urkel saying, "Did I do that?" Why is Tron, the super genius robotics engineer, foiled at every turn by the robots that she designed and built? Why did she make them morons? I mean, I get it, it's supposed to be funny, but it didn't work for me, and unfortunately, it's also the only joke the game knows, and it just keeps telling it.
Huh? Wait a second. Isn't this... Sorry. We ended up in front of the animal hospital again. Don't you ever learn from your mistakes? How could you do this again? When we get back, I'm gonna have to punish all of you! Oh no!
The way the missions are laid out doesn't do the game any favors either. Picking mission types you enjoy sounds good on paper, but it comes with some pitfalls. The game is only 5 or so hours long, and the player gets a lot of agency in how they want to make money, but that also means the devs had to design 4 distinct mission types. And because they can't control what order you take them in, or if you'll do them at all, they wind up having to be pretty shallow, and none of them can be directly tied to the story, so you never really have much of a sense of progression either. The combat in the game also feels strangely worse than the other two. There are very few enemy types and almost no ability to customize your weapons, and it's awkward dragging around the serve bots like Pikmin. But I think the biggest problem for me is this lumbering Big Daddy mech that Tron rides around in. The movement controls seem to work the same as Legends 1, and I think you even move the same speed, but because Trigger was so small, he always felt quick and responsive. I could jump and shoot circles around enemies, but now I feel like I'm on a boat. Everything seems to hit me, and I don't think the auto-aim tracks as reliably, though that could be because I can't make my gun shoot faster and further. It's made worse because for some reason that auto-aim will track enemies based on their horizontal position, but not vertically. And if you use the auto-aim, you don't get to lock on anymore. You can't change the controls in a mission either, so I would be constantly shooting under enemies unless I jumped or stood still and aimed. I mentioned the stats and the special ability systems earlier, and like I said, there's a core there that could be built out to be really interesting, but either the game never gets there or I just totally misunderstood it. Before you start a mission, you can switch out which robot goes with you to maximize their stat gains, but I don't think I could tell you the difference between a maxed out follower and a newbie. The special abilities are interesting, but the game isn't going to punish you for just sticking with the starter set, so eventually that's what I did because it didn't seem to matter. Theoretically, the most important special ability would be the sniper trait that allows that servbot to pilot the Gustav, so you use them on their missions and their stats affect your stats. There are several different bots that can use this skill, but I still couldn't tell the difference between using them. And the combat in the game is so easy that until I hit the final boss, I was just cruising through it. It would have been a lot more interesting if the pilot robot changed the weapon, like one servbot makes it a rifle and another makes it the bazooka, with the fire rate and all of that changing based on their stats, but right now it just doesn't do enough. Maybe there's more to this system that I missed, and there'll be someone in the comments telling me how I was going through the whole game with the parking brake on like an idiot. I kind of hope that's the case because I like Tron and I want to like this game more, but I have to be honest with my experience of playing it, and right now, this is what it is. The biggest draw for me to the Legends series was the vibe. That kid's cartoon feeling, and I don't really get it from this game. I think it's because I don't feel like I'm progressing a story. I feel like I'm paying down bills that never get any smaller. And that's not very fun, even if the jobs that I do aren't terrible on their own. It's missing the connective tissue, the exploration, the NPCs, and the little touches that make the whole thing feel like a three-dimensional space. I don't want to hold it against the game that the developers decided to take things in a different way, but it highlights that you can have the same team and the same IP and the same art style and even a lot of the same mechanics and characters and still wind up with a game that does not affect you in the same way as a player. In the modern day, this would be a DLC, a side island and some mini-games, a small story with no real consequences. And that's fine. I wish more developers were doing stuff like it rather than slog through 8-year-long dev cycles to put out one game per console generation. I'm looking at you, Naughty Dog. Smaller swings with established IP are a nice palate cleanser between major entries, but this game is a full release, and it has to stand on its own in the shadow of Legends 1, and it's just a little too small and a little too shallow to really recommend to all but the hungriest of Legends fans. Thankfully, even after this game, those fans wouldn't be waiting too much longer. Legends 2 released less than a year later, and with it, the series would never be the same. I don't know, man. Maybe you're right. I know they're supposed to be related or something, or adopted, but the way it's framed is weirdly intimate.
What?
I'm just saying it is a thing in a lot of Japanese media.
That was like an hour ago. You're still thinking about it?
I mean, yeah, after you pointed it out, it was kind of hard not to see it. Hey, what was that Folgers thing you were talking about?
Oh, buddy, you are not ready for that. It ended with the brother singing, "The best part of waking up is seeing my sister's butt."
No, you made that up.
Maybe. Only one way to find out.
Alright. Folgers incest commercial. Megaman Legends 2 is a third-person dungeon crawler developed by Capcom and released in the year 2000 for the PlayStation 1. Believe it or not, it's a sequel to Mega Man Legends 1, a game that ends with plenty of great plot hooks. Roll's lost parents, the search for the Mother Lode, where did Mega Man come from, and what is Elysium? That's enough to set us up for several sequels, so it sure would be a shame if they tried to shove all of those things into just one game. It's a bit of a monkey's paw situation because Legends 2 is basically what I would have thought I wanted at the end of the first game. I loved the world that was being established and the gameplay loop of exploring and digging, so the idea of traveling around in the Flutter on a road trip adventure, fighting pirates and clearing dungeons sounds perfect, but somehow, sadly, it's not perfect. And that's a hard thing to say because I still think it's really good. I want to specifically state that early on because if you only took one thing away from me talking about this game, I do hope that it's that. It's easy to complain about games, especially when you're comparing them to something that you really like, but I don't ever want to be that guy. I make videos about games that I enjoy, and if I'm saying I don't like something about it, it's not because I think the game is bad, but because I wish that I could like the game even more, and because I want to understand why I don't. So Mega Man Legends 2 is a good game. It's not perfect, but I can still recommend it more than almost any other game on the PlayStation 1. It's a lot of fun, the characters are likable, the story is interesting, and the gameplay is enjoyable. Almost everything about the game feels like it's been expanded on or improved individually, but the way those things fit together doesn't have the same level of charm for me. In some ways, it is a better game than the first, but even though I don't have any nostalgia for that game, because I didn't play it as a child, I still prefer Legends 1 to Legends 2. Legends 1 has all of its pieces of its setting balanced in just the right way to make it something that I could see myself playing regularly and never getting bored of. But Legends 2 doesn't strike that same balance for me, and that's mostly because it's just trying to do too much. I think the introduction itself is probably a great example. In Legends 1, before the main menu, it can play 2 cutscenes, but they're both less than a minute long. One is a preview of the Bonne family, and the other is a text crawl to set up the world a little bit, but none of it's really mandatory. You wouldn't be missing anything by skipping those cutscenes entirely. And when you start the actual game, you meet Megaman and you hear him talking to Roll, where they establish that they need money and that they get it by finding treasure in dangerous ruins, before we get to explore a small ruin as a tutorial, fight a boss, and escape. On the Flutter, Roll mentions the Mother Lode and her parents, but when the Flutter breaks down, then they crash, the game starts in a peaceful field full of bird song and we get to explore a little bit. It's a nice low-stakes introduction that takes like 10 minutes and tells you everything you need to know. It's light, it's funny, it's cute, alright? In Legends 2, there's a 10-minute cutscene before the main menu. It's there to establish Von Blucher and how Beryl knows him, what the Forbidden Island is and the fact that they both went there before, and the Sulphur Bottom and why they're on it. We're shown that the Bonne family, along with several other villains, are also on the ship, as well as a woman we don't know who warns them to stay away from the Forbidden Island before blowing out a window and escaping. Roll says that the blonde lady looks just like her mom, and so they decide to go save everyone and explore the Forbidden Island looking for answers. And that's a lot, right? Well, we haven't even started the game yet. The game actually opens with Megaman piloting the Flutter, trying to catch up to the Sulphur Bottom. We get to talk to Roll, and she explains how we lost all of our upgrades from the first game.
I'm really sorry, Megaman. I needed to upgrade the Flutter. I'm afraid I sold all your equipment. Please forgive me.
And then Data tries to assassinate Megaman by setting the ship on fire. I really like that when he's on fire running around, he'll say, "Why do I have to be like this?"
Why do I have to be like this?
And, yeah, good question. Putting out the fires is actually our tutorial, and then we'll go into another cutscene. Roll's mom's original attack during the interview was just trying to get them to stay away from the Forbidden Island, but they ignored her, so now she tries again, but accidentally takes out the ship's engines and causes them to crash directly into the place that she didn't want them to go. Roll and Megaman have caught up to them by now, but Roll knows that the Flutter can't make it through the storm. So they set down nearby the city of Yosyonki to refuel and try to figure out a way to get on the island. Luckily, Roll held on to a blueprint that her father created for a dropship specifically built to pass through heavy storms. How convenient. She specifically says that she was told never to build it, but this is an emergency, so she's gonna do it anyway. We step out of the ship into the icy, somber wasteland, and it does not feel like we're on our own Pokemon adventure anymore. Don't get me wrong, I don't think this is a bad introduction, but it is a massive change in tone from the first game. If you're just counting cutscenes and include the one before the main menu, you're like 20 minutes into Legends 2 at this point. You've witnessed 2 airship attacks, 3 if you count Data making pizza. Beryl and the Bonds might be dead, Roll's mom is back from the dead, and you're alone in the snow. In my initial review, I was disappointed that this introduction felt like such a massive tonal shift from what I liked about Legends 1, and while I still wish we could have gone back to our Saturday morning cartoon, time has changed my opinion on the subject. I guess it's not really true that the tone is different if I consider the changes that come after you open the main gate. It's really more of a continuation of what started when you met Juno and learned that there were greater forces in the world working towards the destruction of the Carbons. As the Flutter leaves Catalog's Island, it felt like we were moving on to our next whimsical adventure, but in some ways it makes sense that the cat is out of the bag and we can't go back to the childlike innocence that we once had. This introduction fits in that world. It doesn't start in the same place as the first game because this isn't an episode of TV. This is growing up. Despite my feelings on how well it's executed, I think that might be the core theme of Legends 2. I think the series was trying to grow up. It's not light, funny, or cute. It's cold, it's dark, and it's not a phase, Mom. This is the first of several islands that you'll explore in Legends 2, but for better or worse, you won't be here for very long. Roll will follow you around on this first excursion, and I thought it was going to be really cool for a moment that we felt like a team and she was going to have a bigger role in the game than just being a voice on the radio that shows up in cutscenes and stands around occasionally in town, but that illusion didn't last long. It's probably for the best, since she spent most of the time she was outside criticizing us for exploring and pressuring us to hurry up and save her grandpa. God, get off my back. He's like 60. He's lived a full life. Hey, watch me kick this snowman. It's doubly annoying that she's pushing you through it because there are still little bits of charm to find in this town if you take the time to see them. Lots of flavor text on random junk and a few small secrets like the back door to the junk shop where the owner will give you a special item if you find the door. If you check the general store, the owner really hates diggers for some reason. There's nothing here for people like you. Jesus, lady. We don't take kindly to your type around here. Juno wasn't the only one trying to start an ethnic cleansing, huh? There's not a whole lot to do on the island, though, except go to church, and they only care to talk to you if you've got money. Sounds familiar. You could be forgiven for thinking this town feels kind of empty. It turns out that when the dungeons on the island ran out of treasure, the diggers who lived here started trying to go to the Forbidden Island to make money, but none of them ever returned. Husbands, brothers, sons, they're all gone, and the families they left behind have been struggling to keep going. Now you're here trying to do the same, opening those old wounds. You talk to the junk shop owner about the dropship parts, but it turns out that there's someone else on the island who's already building one. No one knows his real name, including himself, so everyone just calls him Joe. 10 years ago, he showed up outside of town with no memory and a missing arm. The local bartender nursed him back to health, and she's been trying to get him to put a ring on it ever since. Roll thinks that this guy who is building the same dropship her dad designed must know her dad, who went missing 10 years ago on an expedition to the Forbidden. It's her dad, alright? It's obviously her dad, and it's never addressed, and it is incredibly stupid. I hate the way Roll's parents are handled in this story, but we'll come back to it. We follow Joe to the first small dungeon, and it's time to start the game proper. Alright, let's talk about the sound.
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
The weapons sound fine, it's about the same as before, and Megaman still sounds like he's got a dog toy in his shoes.
Again with the squeaky shoes.
But the music overall feels like a real step down from both the first game and Misadventures of Tron Bonne. There are still some good tracks in here, but most of them feel like somebody left the intern alone with a bootleg copy of Fruity Loops and told him to have it done by Monday. You'll get 16 measures of bland rhythm and then some weird loud noise before it repeats, and this comes up surprisingly often, but it might not be so bad if it wasn't immediately obvious in literally the first field and dungeon. I'm pretty sure I have a preset on my old Casio keyboard that sounds just like this. Alright, let's get out of here. We take Joe's drop pod and leave him in the hospital. He's lucky we didn't leave him 6 feet under. We drop on the island and fight a bunch of robots, and we kill an elephant, and I'm really only going into this much detail to point out that before we landed on the first island, we saw the sulfur bottom crash into the center of the storm. Now that we killed that boss, the storm clears and the ship still hasn't hit the ground. Have you ever heard of William Rankin? In 1959, he was flying an F-8 Crusader when the engine failed and he had to eject in the middle of a huge storm cloud. It took 40 minutes of getting the shit kicked out of him before he made it to the ground. He wrote about it in a book called The Man Who Rode the Thunder. I assume that's what was happening here. Now freed from a giant crystal, we meet Sarah and Geets. They tell Von Blucher that if he collects 4 keys from conveniently nearby dungeons, they can open the door to the legendary treasure known as the Mother Lode. You know, that thing Roll and every other digger have been looking for their entire lives. Like any other rich guy who totally earned their wealth through their own merit, Von Blucher is quick to turn to unpaid child labor, asking Megaman to do it for him. I'm not gonna bury the lead here. I don't really like Von Blucher. It was different when the mayor of a small town and their ineffectual but polite police force needed help with a bigger problem than getting a cat out of a tree. But the dynamics of heroism change when you're being told to go do all the work by some billionaire who's surrounded by his personal army in his flying mansion the size of a small city. Von Blucher is not a sympathetic, likable, or interesting character. His only reason for being in the story is that he has money, and just like real life, having a lot of money does not make you an interesting person. They even put the rich old guy theme song on his ship. I like to imagine he's pumping it through the speakers 24/7. All that money doesn't really help him much anyway, since his city-sized boat gets taken out with one stray laser, and we beat him to the Forbidden Island in a drop pod that Joe made out of garbage.
Possible. Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave! With a box of scraps!
And then the Sulphur Bottom spends the rest of the game floating above the middle of the ocean. Massive, ugly, overvalued, and totally useless, they should have named it the AI Data Center. Still, it's clear that the team planned for him to be a meaningful character. He's given a backstory of being a digger himself, one of Barrel's old partners, and he grew up in Yosyonki. You can go to his childhood home, and the people living there will tell you about how he always wanted to go to the Forbidden Island because he thought one of the goddesses was sleeping there, which is a surprising level of insight from a man who's named Blucher but is very clearly wearing a red shirt.
Your clothes are red!
Now you'll be able to go out and explore some islands, delve some dungeons, and fight some bosses, but you still have to do them in a specific order. You might be thinking, wow, this is a very similar setup to the first game. And yes, each island has its own main dungeon and an optional sub-dungeon. The main dungeons run through your standard Nintendo roster of forest, water, fire, ice, and gravity. But to be fair, for every bit I can complain about the changes to the surface world, the underground sections of Legends 2 are a massive improvement over the first game. I love how much more varied and distinct the dungeons feel, even if it is mostly an aesthetic change. The layouts are much larger and more complex, the rooms themselves are more interesting, and it's awesome how there's even more enemy variety. There are some returning Reaver bots, but I love the little frogs and dragonflies and elephants and how they contrast with the weird stuff like the treasure chests that run away from you and the creepy birds that transform into wacky inflatable flailing armed dinosaurs when you hit them. Most of the bosses are great too, and the variety is a big improvement, but while I want to say I appreciate the devs for trying something different with the hazards, gimmicks like ice floors and gravity doors do get old pretty fast. There are special shoes that you can build to counteract them, but they're pretty easy to just ignore, so the only one that really mattered was the water dungeon. I hated the water dungeon. The whole thing runs at like half speed, and there is nothing as fun as getting hit by an enemy and falling for this long. That water dungeon is on Nino Island, and I think it's a really interesting part of the game from a design perspective, even if I don't love what it does for the game's pacing. Nino Island is a platform sticking out of the ocean. The locals are in crisis because the pirates have been attacking them to gain access to the gate with one of the keys. This time it's Glide and his ducks. They've destroyed some of the city's defenses, and the people are scared that the next time they attack, they won't be able to hold them off. And so to get access to the key yourself, you have to defend the town. It's kind of a wave-based tower defense thing, but it just takes so long. And then the mayor says, "Thanks for saving us, Megaman, but they're just gonna keep coming back, so could you scoot over to this other island and fight a whole army for us too?" Yeah, man, sure. So we do that, and on the way we meet some fair old children and save their older sister, and that's cool, but what you're actually doing is another set of rooms with combat challenges, and that part is pretty boring. The combat in the Legends games is fun and good, but much like sprinkles on a cupcake, I don't just want the sprinkles. Over and over, mouthfuls of sprinkles. Give me some cupcake, please. Exploration and puzzles and platforming and NPC interactions are all very important ingredients in this cupcake, and I'm not getting enough of them. We save the girl and return to Nino Island, where we have another combat encounter defending Roll from Glide while she repairs a sonar turret thing. That has to be some kind of war crime. But now we can finally go into the dungeon. Right, the dungeon full of water. The dungeon designed specifically to hold water. The water dungeon. That dungeon? Yes, that dungeon. And for my money, it's easily the worst dungeon in the game. And that means you went from a fairly tedious back-to-back combat challenges to the absolute slog of the underwater level. It's a 1-2 punch to the the flow state, and the game never really recovers its sense of peaks and valleys that come from sessions of intense stimulation and lapses into periods of breathless refractory. This is a strange metaphor, but the point is, from this point on, there's no time to explore and not much to see or do other than fight, fight, fight. Luckily, the combat does feel better in this game than the first in a way that I didn't really appreciate on my first playthrough because there was a gap in time between experiencing them. The aim assist, the lock-on, and the ability to move while attacking all flow much more smoothly together. And even though you can use the right thumbstick to control the camera, after taking the time to get used to strafing with the shoulder buttons in Legends 1, it felt really unnatural to switch to the joystick. It kind of goes against conventional wisdom, but this system still feels good and works really well to allow you to circle enemies while locked on in a 3D space and not have to keep your right thumb on the stick the entire time, so you can more easily jump and shoot and use your special weapons. The other control schemes still work fine, and I appreciate that they're there, but I had originally praised the second game for allowing that right thumbstick to control the camera, and I wanted to sort of emphasize in this rewrite that even though it's cool that it had that option, it's really not needed because what we already had worked fine once you were used to it. Circle strafing in the first game completely wrecked the difficulty of the combat, and with all of these changes, I'm glad to say that this game manages to be even more mobile. While we're talking about what the game does well, let's talk about graphics. They're good. Legends 1 also looked good, but that was largely because of how well it utilized its art direction. Chunky polygons work well with bright colors and fat, pixelated textures. Legends 2 manages to feel similar, but visually it's much more refined. The textures are smoother, the lines are cleaner, and the characters are so much more expressive. It really shines in the cutscenes where you can tell the artists were able to polish up the animations and shots were framed much more cinematically. The way Joe leans against the wall in pain in the first dungeon with his big heavy metal arm pulling him down to the side is really cool when you compare it to Legends 1, where everyone might as well have just been T-posing the entire game. It speaks to a ton of effort to not only tell a story, but inject that telling with emotion that was often lacking in games of this era before mocap became the norm. And now for some of the not so good. Dungeons aside, each island is much smaller than KalTheSkeleton, and like the Misadventures of Tron, Bonne, they're very disconnected. That's a shame, because one of the coolest moments for me in Legends 1 was when I unlocked the drill, and I was able to go into one of the gates, destroy a wall, and then come out of a different gate on the other side of the island. But that's not going to be a thing you're ever able to do in Legends 2. There are still destructible walls to be found, but they just lead to small treasures, and that's okay. But the biggest shortcoming for me is that the NPCs don't have anywhere near the same level of dynamism over the course of the story. There are small changes when you're on an island like Nino talking to people in between each fight, but as you progress the overall story and leave an island, the characters in those spaces might as well cease to exist. That's not totally surprising. It would feel a little unreasonable to expect the old man in the snow to care about what's happening on the other side of the world, but it would be nice if they changed a little to help that sense of it being a real world. There are only like 5 people on the airship, and you do have to come back to it after getting each key, but nothing ever changes there either. The guards all say the same thing. No one moves, and Sarah pretends to be asleep on the bed, and Geets just repeats the same line. The NPCs in the first game just felt so much more alive. Like, there's this couple in the lakeside area of Legends 1, and you might never talk to them, but they're going on a date. The first time you meet them, they're talking about how they want to go to the museum, and as you progress the main story, they take a walk and talk about how they're going to go out on a boat ride later. By the time you're gearing up to fight the final boss, the guy has proposed to his girlfriend and they're making wedding plans. After the final fight and before you leave on the flutter, you can go back into town and say goodbye to everyone, and they'll thank you for whatever you've done for them, saving the city itself or completing side quests, and it's really fantastic. It makes it feel like a living, breathing, reactive world. By comparison, in Legends 2, that general store lady is a jerk to you because you are a digger, and her brother was a digger who was lost on the Forbidden Island. After you free Sarah, he comes back along with everyone else who was trapped in a bubble, and she says she's sorry. And that's the totality of her story. Also, all of the people who were trapped on the Forbidden Island didn't age when they were in stasis. So this guy came back to his wife, who is now much older than him, and that seems like the kind of thing that would be interesting to expand on. I've got no clue how long it's been, but with a face like that, she's gotta be the Legends version of a grandma. She's probably at least like 30. In anime years, she's almost dead. It's a real missed opportunity because this game has a much greater emphasis on interpersonal relationships. There's the relationships between Megaman and Roll and her parents, and the pirates, and Joe's relationship to his new family. This reoccurring theme of loss and the things that are left behind as time passes, which would be a really great thing to explore with these people who were stuck on the Forbidden Island, and they just don't. The world is wider, but it's also much more shallow, and that's a real shame. It's not like any of these islands have a ton of characters anyway. I haven't counted them up, but if you told me that Legends 2 had the same number of NPCs across 5 islands as there were on KalTheSkeleton alone, I'd believe you. And immediately after finishing the game, if I was looking at a list of the town names, I seriously doubt I could put the right name to the right island. As I was putting this video together after several rewrites and re-recordings, I just felt like this whole section was really negative. Like way more negative than I'd normally want to be in one of these videos. And maybe I was letting my memory of Legends 1 and my expectations for the sequel color my perceptions of Legends 2 more than was fair. I thought that maybe if I went back and I played Legends 2 again with a fresh set of eyes looking for the things that it did well, I'd discover a new love for it, or at least new things to love about it. And so, after working on this video for months, I put it down and I replayed Legends 2 from the beginning. And I've gotta say, I was right the first time, and I found several new things to be annoyed about, so sorry guy who said that everything in my first video was bullshit, and that the game is great because he played it as a child. We'll just have to agree to disagree. Anyway, on the subject of those islands and things that are not as good as the first game, I hope someone out there can prove me wrong, but as far as I know, there's no fast traveling on the islands themselves, and that's weird because you used to be able to do that. I know I said they were small, but that doesn't really make them fun to walk across. In Legends 1, you could call Roll if you were in the overworld, and she would come get you and take you wherever you wanted to go, but now you have to physically walk back to the Flutter from anywhere on the island. Add on to this the fact that there's no quick way to leave a dungeon from inside, even if you've already finished it, and it makes for a lot of walking with nothing else going on. Sure, you don't have the car anymore, but I'm willing to suspend my disbelief for the convenience. On the subject of convenience, you also still can't change your special weapon outside of the Flutter, which means if you get most of the way through a dungeon and decide that you want to use a different weapon for the boss, or if you were using the vacuum arm for convenience and need a real weapon, then you're shit out of luck. Which is almost comical if you consider that they put in the ability to switch between arm types, but you can only use it to switch from your one weapon to the grabby hand that you use to lift things. This was a real pain when I got to the game's final boss and I had to walk my happy metal butt back through like 36 areas of that dungeon, talk to an NPC, and then cross a field just to switch or upgrade my weapons, and then do it all again to get back to the boss. Those weapon upgrades cost a ton, by the way, and I'm not a fan of grinding for money, so if you find yourself light on pocket change, there's an easy way to stock up that I found on Game FAQs thanks to the user Rapsbury. In the Manda Island sub-dungeon, there's a golden bird enemy that can infinitely respawn every time you enter and leave the room that it's in, and it drops 5, 7, or 10,000 zenny every time you kill it. At the highest license level, you can get over 1 million zenny in an hour, and that's enough to get you through the vast majority of the game pretty easily, but if you want all of the unlockables, or if you want to fully upgrade all of the special weapons, you're going to be grinding for a really long time. The Shining Laser is the strongest weapon in the game, and its final energy upgrade is like 9 million zenny by itself. Personally, if the only thing standing between me and these upgrades is walking in and out of a room for 10 hours, I don't see anything wrong with turning on a cheat code for that, so after doing everything else in the game except the final boss and dying to him an embarrassing number of times, that's what I did. Cheat codes are fine though. I know it doesn't make me a bad person. You can tell if a person is bad by the color of their skin. At least you can in this game. There's actually a morality system which did exist in Legends 1 but didn't really do very much. The easiest way to see it was to do a side quest where you have to catch some serve bots that robbed the bank and steal the money for yourself, and then you could go through the rest of the game with a sweet paint job. In Legends 2, if you do enough bad things like kicking pigs or shooting children, Megaman will slowly get darker. Shops will charge more for items, and there's even a special weapon if you're a bad enough dude. If you do fall to the dark side though, don't worry, because just like real life, any crime you commit can be consequence-free if you have enough money. Whether through donations to the church or benevolent actions, Mega Man will become lighter colored and shops will give you a discount. There's also a separate affection system specifically for Roll. Personally, I capped her ass in the snow and she didn't like that. She also doesn't like it if you try to pick her up. She'll slap you around and eventually she can even kill you if you're too handsy. But if you bring her presents and generally be nice to her, she'll give you a discount on your weapon upgrades. Wait, why is there wiggle room on the price? Is there a margin? Are you making a profit on the tools I'm using to help find your parents? Oh man, I can't believe Tron was right.
Haven't you ever noticed that she's keeping some of the money you give her for weapons development for herself? She's skimming off the top, and you don't even realize it.
What? Skimming?
She makes you all sorts of equipment and weapons, right? Do you really think it costs that much? Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't find out about that, Mega Man.
Speaking of those weapons, they have a much greater variety this time around, and the game is tuned to be a little bit more difficult so you actually have a reason to use them. I even managed to find the vacuum arm this time, though unfortunately you do still have to replace one of your other weapons with it, so the convenience still comes at a pretty steep cost. Thankfully, it looks like they did actually increase the range you collect shards from normally, though, as she said, it could be bigger. While we're on the topic of difficulty, the license system from the first game has also been upgraded, and now you can take a test to increase your digger level, and that opens up a few optional dungeons for you, as well as increasing the difficulty and rewards for every enemy in the game. I would caution you against increasing your license level too early, though. It greatly increases the amount of damage that you have to do to enemies without changing much else, so until you have some later game upgrades, it can make the dungeons kind of a slog. It's not a perfect system by any means, but what it does is let you modify the game's difficulty yourself without making you pick it from a menu, which a lot of times can sour an experience because a player might think they need to play on hard even though the game is less fun that way. This game starts out easy and lets you turn things up when you're ready, and it rewards you for doing so. The only downside is you don't really have a way of knowing if that increase in difficulty is too much until it's too late, and even though the game tells you to make a separate save file just in case, you could be potentially losing hours of progress if you decide that you wanted to go back. You know where you won't be losing hours though? The minigames. While I don't personally care for minigames, they can be a nice change of pace once in a while, and it's a little disappointing that compared to Legends 1 and Misadventures of Tron Bonne, they basically got rid of them entirely. There is still a race, but it's even less enjoyable than the first game, and there is a quiz that you can get the sword arm from. I actually enjoyed the quiz because I'm a weirdo like that, but I can't pretend that it was really worth the effort, and I don't think it really fills the same space that other minigames often do. It's pretty obvious that the quiz was aimed at older players, even when the game came out, because it's 100 questions long and full of stuff like the Sex Pistols and the Roman Empire. The sword arm looks cool, but it's not really very useful, but still, I like trivia, so I guess I'm not really complaining. But why do I bring it up at all then if I don't really care about minigames? Well, because it's a symptom of what's actually keeping Legends 2 from surpassing the first game for me. I think somewhere in the time between the release of Legends 1 and 2, the series tried to grow up, which is especially strange when you consider that quote from the game's director lamenting how the first game didn't appeal to the established Megaman's elementary school fan base. This game's story has a much more serious tone and higher stakes, and that might be something that you really enjoy, but for me it left behind the coziness of the first game, and it was the combination of the sour and the sweet that kept me engaged. The tonal shift from the first game to the second is like if I had been playing Stardew Valley with its back and forth between calm farming and time-pressured mining, but suddenly in the fall a plague came through town and started killing everyone, and I had to find a cure and save my ailing wife. I can't really enjoy a game in that tone, but I wanted to play Stardew Valley, and instead I'm playing Pathologic, and it doesn't really feel the same. If we ignore all the dog kicking, Legends 1 is a low-stakes romp through a colorful world full of cartoonish villains and spooky dungeons with Megaman and his sister wife. 3 years later, I think Legends 2 wanted to mature with its audience, but in doing so, it gave up my favorite parts. It's a tough call because if you look at something like Pokemon, it's still going strong because it ignored its audience for 30 years and just kept targeting little kids. Legends 2 puts away childish things like minigames and happy endings and replaces them with a darker tone, a global threat, family trauma, and a clumsy desire to appeal to young boys with fan service. That might seem like a strange thing to throw into the script. I thought it was a strange thing to put in the game. And 3 games into this series, I wish I could make you understand how much I really don't care about fan service in games. I've got no problem with sexy ladies or dudes. I typically just ignore them, but I do think the way the girl characters in these games are treated is a really weird choice that was specifically made to appeal to a certain demographic of middle schooler or sweaty weirdo that you don't want to engage with. And once I noticed it, every time it came up, it felt like I was passing by someone's thinly disguised fetish, and I just really don't enjoy that feeling. In the section on the Forbidden Island, we get an extended shot of this naked little girl, but don't worry, she's really a 5,000-year-old robot or something, so it's fine that they drew on her ass crack. I thought Sarah's model was bad enough in this cutscene, but it turns out that there is a debug room that the developers made that you can access with the GameShark code, and for some reason in that room you can control this model of Sarah and move her through several poses. It's surprising that even the cutscene version of her model got through the weirdly puritanical American censorship laws around children's video games, but it's not a subject I particularly want to dig into anymore. Thankfully, that's the only instance of direct nudity on screen, but there's also the quiz lady shaking her chest at you and several of the merchants. And if your affinity with roll gets high enough, you do get that discount. But then Megaman walks in on her in the bath, and he does this little fist pump after she yells at him to leave.
What do you think you're doing?
And in case you're wondering, that bath scene is not optional. As far as I can tell, if you're just being nice to her, you cannot leave the island you're on until you walk in on her, after Data tells you that she's taking a bath. When you beat Tron in the volcano boss fight, the robot she's in explodes, and the game makes an extended joke about her clothes getting blown off. And Megaman and the Servbots stare at her while she monologues without noticing.
Well, there goes another Gustav. But it doesn't matter. You're too late. We won. Bonne is on his way back to the surface with the key. What? Why is your face red? Why is everyone looking at me that way? Miss Tron, your clothes have been kind of ripped up. Actually, your clothes are gone. What? You dummies! Why didn't you tell me before? Retreat! Roger!
While a little kid Cal probably would have been on board with these things, keep in mind these are both 16-year-old girls at most. I'm an adult, probably about the same age as the developers who made this game, and this is gross. It's a sad way to write and present characters that should be great role models for kids like my own daughters. I want them to see women in games who are smart, capable, and funny, and not just eye candy or the butt of jokes. Anyway, as usual, I'm not the developer for this game, so I don't know if I'm right about why the tone changed so much, but this feeling of bigger, cooler, and more mature is really at the core of any criticisms I have for the game. There are places where Legends 2 is weaker than the first because of this. I've already talked about how the islands feel sparse and flat, but the next biggest example is probably in the villains that you're fighting. The Bonne family do come back, and they're still great, but they share the majority of their screen time with the other pirates they've made an alliance with, and those guys are not as great. We met Glide and his small army of robotic birds before, but the birds themselves get way more attention than he does. They even have their own mini dungeon, so Glide is just kind of around, not really doing much and being kind of annoying. The brothers Bola and Claymore are better, but they don't even get their own dungeon. They just show up a few times for quick boss fights, and while I enjoy their banter, they still don't get anywhere close to the highs of the Bonne family in the first game. They've got that just one more job and we're out of this line of work for good thing going on, and you get the sense that they don't really want to be here at all. Neither of these teams is bad, but they suffer from the same problems as the Bonnes in this entry. There's just way too much going on for any of them to get any real development. In the first game, you didn't even know there was another antagonist until the last 5% of the game. It was just you and the Bonnes racing to the same treasure. But in this game, all of the pieces are on the board at the start. There's a whole rogues gallery of B-tier villains, and Roll's mom with her weird flying death machine, and they're all competing for our attention. As much as I like the Bonne family, I would have been totally fine for them to have sat this one out so that the new characters could have been better established. Since this game's so much longer anyway, you could have either started out with just the pirates and introduced Roll's mom later on, or start with the new villains first and have the Bonnes come in later to help Megaman again as a nice little callback. As it is, those pirates never feel like the main antagonists of this game. They're just annoyances while you're going through the dungeons and collecting keys so that you can progress the real story that's about Roll's mom and the Forbidden Island. To talk about the story though, I have to get into spoilers. I won't be going through it beat for beat anyway, and I do think that this series is worth experiencing for yourself, so I guess I'll put that warning here and you can skip ahead to the time on screen if you'd like. But at the same time, Capcom doesn't want to sell this game to you, and it can be very difficult to find and legally obtain a physical copy, so you just follow your own heart on that, I guess. Okay, so on the first island, there's a lady walking around who will tell you the legend of the twin goddesses. She says that people believe that there are two beings, one that rules over the heavens and one that rules over the earth, and whenever the one that rules over the heavens lifts up her voice, everything will come to an end and everything will begin again. This is the game establishing the seeds of the story that is coming. The main conflict of the game is actually centered around Megaman, Yuna, and Sarah. Yuna being the AI that has taken over Roll's mother, and Sarah being the one that we found in a crystal on the Forbidden Island. She's also the ruler of Elysium. Sometime in the past, Megaman Trigger was living on Elysium with the last real human who we only know as the Master. The Master's original plan was to use something called the Master System to wipe out the carbons and replace them with clones of real humans. But after living in space alone for over 3,000 years, he came down to the planet himself, and after seeing how things were going, decided that the carbons should be the ones to inherit the Earth. And then he died, apparently from the same thing that killed the aliens in War of the Worlds. Or maybe it was like Mars attacks.
I'm calling you.
Richie, I think these guys are very sick.
He left his dying wish with Trigger to protect the carbons and destroy the Master System. There are two administrators over the Master System known as Mother Units, Yuna on the planet and Sarah on Elysium. But they didn't get the memo from the Master and attempt to follow through on his original plan. But they need the Master's genetic code to start the purge, and Megaman put his own memories as well as that code into Data, the monkey in a diaper, for safekeeping. And then he spent several years fighting against Yuna until eventually she decided she was done and just left whatever happened to the planet up to Trigger and Sarah. So Sarah had to come down to the planet and fight Trigger directly, but since she wasn't in her home base, she was a lot weaker. Their battle ended in a tie, and Yuna put them both into stasis. This turned Megaman into the baby that Beryl found a long time later, and Sarah was imprisoned on the Forbidden Island until Von Blucher came and fucked that up. This is a pretty cool story, but unfortunately it all gets dumped on us right before the final dungeon in a way that felt very rushed. I think it ties back to that idea of there being way too many plot hooks that are all pulling on the 15-hour runtime of this game. Even with 15 hours, half of that time is spent doing the dungeons, so you're actually trying to cram all of that into like 8 hours of game and set up all of those pirates and establish all these different islands you have to go to, and it's just too much. There's more than enough here to split into multiple games. This could be the story where we compete with the Sky Pirates to find the Mother Lode, and at the end we discover that Roll's parents went to the Forbidden Island, and then in the next game let's learn where Trigger came from and what Elysium and the Master System are, and fight to save the world once and for all. What we've got is still fine, but it's hard for me to really say that I give a shit about the new pirates or Roll's parents or Sarah and Yuna, because I barely have a concept of who any of them are. When Megaman found Sarah on the Forbidden Island, she still had her memories and decided to use him to collect the 4 keys that she needs to go back to Elysium and kill all the Carbons. But because we have no emotional investment in these characters, her sudden yet inevitable betrayal is a completely hollow, dramatic twist. Sarah and Geets have given me no reason to trust them in the first place. They've acted quite villainous, and I'd be surprised if they've said 5 lines in the entire runtime of the game up to this point. So as soon as I was told to bring all of the mythical artifacts together in one place, we all knew what was gonna happen. Sarah goes back to space, and her golden dragon robot almost destroys Megaman again, which is what causes him to remember all of that crap I just told you in one big cutscene. And then he goes with Yuna and Gats up to Elysium. It's an okay dungeon, but it really could use a few teleporter pads or something. And after a massive spike in difficulty, Sarah is stopped, and Yuna transfers Sarah's consciousness into Yuna's old body. They've finally found common ground, but it's not all roses because Gats was destroyed by Elysium's defenses off-screen while Megaman and Sarah were fighting, so they have no way to get back down to the planet.
Don't worry, Yuna.
Why?
I know Roll. She'll come looking for us, no matter what happens.
And then the credits roll. Yep, that's it. We're told that the Elder System is activating, and I guess that means that the Reaverbots from dungeons all over the world are going to start coming out of the ruins and killing all of the humans. And unfortunately, the only people who could do anything about it, Trigger, Yuna, and Sarah, are all trapped on the moon. After the credits, we see Megaman's friends trying and failing to build a rocket to bring him back home, which seems like something they should be pretty good at considering all the robots and airships that they build, but I guess no one on this planet has ever tried to build a rocket? I don't know, it's kinda weird. There's also the matter of Roll's parents. Before we went to space, Yuna tells Trigger that when this is all over, she'll transfer her consciousness back to her own body and Roll's mom will come back. Her consciousness has been dormant inside of her all of these years, but I guess that can't happen now because the body Yuna was supposed to go back to is occupied by Sarah. And we already know where Roll's dad is, on the first island. He's been living there for years after he made it back from the Forbidden Island. He lost his arm, one eye, and his memories. Okay, sure. Forgive me if I rant for a moment here. Beryl also explored the Forbidden Island a long time ago, and when he and Von Blucher passed out in the storm next to the giant crystal, you know where they woke up? Yosyonki City. In the 10 years they've been looking for Roll's parents, he never once checked the place he woke up when he got lost on the same island that they were lost on. And when Roll finds him, she doesn't recognize him. Do they not have a picture of her dad? They didn't mention the guy on the island who had the same blueprints as her dad to Beryl after they met up with him? He could just look at the guy's face and know who he is. It's so stupid. This entire side story of Roll's dad with a new woman and her daughter and them trying to get him to stay and become the father to some kid when he spent 10 years trying to figure out who he is so fucking stupid. It drives me insane. Why did you write this? It doesn't make sense. There's no reason. This has to have been something that was going to be handled differently, and they just ran out of time, right? Speaking of time, I really don't like when a story is told where the amount of time that events take are massively blown out of proportion. Do you know what I mean? Joe has allegedly been in this town for 10 years. That's way too big of a gap in time for this kind of story. In 10 years, he should have already either moved on or done something to figure out where he came from. We have established that there is a mail system that goes across the other islands. It cannot be that hard to take a picture of this guy and just see if anybody knows who he is. Put him on the back of a milk carton or something. We established that everyone in this world is a fucking robot. He doesn't have like a barcode or an ID number. Did they find him naked? He didn't have a wallet? It doesn't make any sense. Even if this stupid bartender lady and her dumbass kid were actively sabotaging his efforts to figure out who he was, 10 years? Before we went for the last key, we talked to him again, and he decided that it was time to stop living in the past. Stop trying to figure out where he came from and move on, which is really just saying it's time to forget about his wife and daughter. Roll. Sucks to be you, Roll. At least you're used to being an orphan. If I can be frank here, this ending sucks. Every part of it. Roll's parents, Megaman on the moon, the Elder System, just all of it fucking sucks. There was no reason for Gats to be killed off screen during the final fight, but it also doesn't actually matter that he's dead, because when Sarah left Earth, she didn't need Geats to get back to Elysium, so there has to be some other way to get up here. And on the other hand, we're on Elysium, the place that builds the robots. Why can't they just build something to come back down? How did the Master and Trigger get to Earth the first time? And how did Data get back down, but Mega Man can't? I recognize that I'm critiquing the story of a game that's made for children, but because of the tonal shift and the way they wanted to mature the formula of the story, it opens itself up to a little bit of criticism, right? By comparison, the story of Legends 1 was aimed at a younger audience, and I think that it was better handled. Even if you thought that the mystery under the island was going to be a bad thing because everyone keeps telling you it's a bad thing, the nature of the catastrophe isn't something that you could easily predict, and that made it a lot more fun to uncover. The twist, if you could call it that, of Legends 2 is immediately predictable because Sarah and Geats outright say that they're going to take the keys at the beginning of the game. And the ending isn't satisfying because the writers basically just said, I don't know, fucking rocks fall, everybody dies, the end, go home. So yeah, Legends 2 ends on a sour note. And that's kind of annoying, but it's only really a problem because this is the last Mega Man Legends game. Legends 3 was announced in 2010 and then cancelled in 2011. Now, 26 years after Legends 2 was released, he's still trapped, both narratively and literally, on obsolete hardware, and it's pretty easy to see why. At the end of 2010, Keiji Inafune, the lead producer on the Legends series, announced that he was leaving Capcom. You might remember him as the guy who made the mighty number 9, which was kind of terrible. In 2017, his company was bought by Level 5, who used to be awesome and you should play Dark Cloud, but since then he's been pretty quiet, except that it came out in 2022 that he was working on some NFTs, if you want any indication of how things seem to be going for the guy. As recently as 2025, he was the lead producer on Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time, but left Level 5 after internal playtests revealed that the game was apparently terrible and still needed major overhauls after already being delayed several years. Apparently those changes worked out pretty well though after he was out of the way, since that game was pretty fun. Unlike Inafune, Capcom has been doing fantastically, but I have a strong suspicion that it wouldn't touch the Legends series with a 10-foot pole because it's associated with someone who doesn't work there anymore. If they did something great with it, they'd have to deal with the legacy of its creators, so much like Trigger himself, the Legends series is stuck, abandoned in space while the people who love it in the indie scene are back on Earth, desperately trying to cobble together some way to capture that same magic. Games like Delta Gal, Abyss X-Zero, and Halcyon Days clearly have a lot of love for the series, and I hope they succeed because I'd love to live in a timeline full of Legends likes. But for now, this is how the legend of Megaman Legends ends. But we're not quite done yet. The main story may stop there, but there was yet another entry in the series. Released in 2008 only in Japan for NTT Docomo mobile phones, Rockman Dash Big 5 Island Adventure was set in the time between Legends 1 and 2. In case you're not a turbo nerd, Rockman is Megaman's Japanese name. Capcom changed it for the English release. But since this game never came out in English, I figured I'd use the real name in case you wanted to look it up. In 2018, Capcom delisted the game from the phone store, and it was considered lost media until a game preservation team known as Scilab Secrets managed to get their hands on a complete copy. The story around how the game was found, decrypted, and translated is pretty interesting, and you can read about it on the website Rockman Corner. I'll link to the article in the description. That article also walks you through how you can play it for yourself. I originally tried setting it up in a virtual machine because I wasn't sure about the launcher, but I kept getting a file not found error, and eventually I decided to raw dog it. That's how dedicated I am to bringing you the full experience. I haven't gotten any strange credit card charges yet, but the night is young. Anyway, the game is a fully featured standalone Mega Man Legends experience for flip phones. And I've got to tell you, it's breaking my brain that this exists at all. And as of 2025, you can play it. And I have. And it's actually pretty good. The 5 islands are broken into 7 levels each, and they only take a minute or two to complete, and they aren't super difficult because, again, it was made for a phone. And sure, the audio and visuals are a little scuffed, but aside from that, this is exactly what I wanted after Mega Man Legends 1. The gang's all here. Trigger and Roll crash on another colorful little island and have to repair the flutter. The Bonds show up to cause trouble and get kicked around a bit. It's got fun NPCs, weapon customization, a variety of levels full of secrets, lots of different enemies to fight, and boss battles that are very reminiscent of the first game. The launcher comes with a keybinder, and the installation instructions have a download link to a file that's already set up so you can play it with a controller. It takes a little getting used to, but it works. It is, as far as the West is concerned, a new 5-ish hour Mega Man Legends game that you can play for free, released in 2025. It's ludicrous! Why is this flip phone game from 2008 better than almost every mobile game that has been made since? Sure, the controls are a little weird, but this is basically a console game on a mobile platform, and it's exactly the thing the Legends fans actually want. And Capcom made it, and then they put it in a place that they couldn't play it. What are we doing here? What have they done to us? Are we born just to suffer? I'm having a meltdown. Is this what mobile gaming was going to be before microtransactions nuked the entire landscape? All of these questions and more will be answered just as soon as Trigger gets back from the moon.
Or maybe we don't need to wait. I think the world needs a hero right now. I'm Mega Man.
Hey, what's going on in here?
Oh, God!
Hey, it's the after the video part. Thanks for hanging out with me. This was a really long one and a long time coming considering I've been trying to get around to Tron Bonne since 2024. You may have seen the older versions of the Legends 1 and 2 reviews on my channel, and those will stay up in their flawed glory, but since I was finishing the series, I wanted to put them all together in a slightly shinier package, and the quality of the first one really wasn't up to what I hope are my standards now. Hopefully it's an improvement. I genuinely can't tell. I feel like I change things with every video just to wind up back at about the same place, so let me know what you think. Life has been hectic since I went back to college, but I've got several more projects in the pipeline that will hopefully be coming soon. I hope you'll find your way back here to check them out when you're able. But I really appreciate you giving the video a chance, and I reserve a special higher level of appreciation for Gim, or maybe Jim, depending on if you say GIF or if you eat Jaloo, also known as Best YouTuber 69. He actually has a channel that's quite enjoyable too if you get bored of my voice. I have always told you all not to send me money on Patreon and that it would get you nothing extra and that there are probably better uses for your dollar. But if you insist, then what am I supposed to do? You think I'm not gonna take $1 and then do a silly little dance? Am I not gonna say your name out loud? You think I have dignity? I make YouTube videos. I don't feel shame. Anyway, consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already. Feel free to check out the Patreon if you'd like, though I struggle to update it regularly, but whether you choose to do those things or not, take care of yourself, and as always, thanks for watching. Later.